Kia ora. Hi, everybody. It's Erin Schertz again. You've seen me a couple of times today. I'm the marketing manager for Roots Tech, and I have a very special guest today from Aotearoa. This is Verna Tutau, and she is here with a really exciting class that I'm really excited to let her give. Before I introduce her and tell you all about her and let her take it from there, I just wanted to remind everybody that wherever you're watching this live video, please share it with other people that might be interested in learning more about their ancestors and figure out how to find them when they cross roadblocks or aren't sure where to go next. Verna has some amazing tips and a lot in store for you that I'm excited for her to share. You can put your comments, excuse me, at any time in the stream. And we will get to them towards the end of her presentation. You can, if you're watching the replay, you can still ask your questions and we will get to them then as well. To start and to make sure that this is working properly, just comment where you're watching from, where you're coming from, and yeah, anything like that. We have James Robinson, and actually he is the one that introduced us to Verna. So thank you for being here, James. So excited, Verna. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our wonderful speaker. Her name is Verna Tutau, and she actually hails from Hamilton, New Zealand, although right now she is in Wellington. And we are so grateful that she's here. She's a lifelong educator and researcher and genealogist, and she has some wonderful tips to share with us about how to find ancestors in New Zealand. But these tips can really be applied in a lot of different areas of the world. But she happens to be from New Zealand and has a case study of an ancestor that she was able to find and identify to really help with her family tree. So without further ado, Verna, thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And welcome, everyone. This is a first for me going live on anything, so I hope everything is going to work well. So this is just a little mihi. It says tu mai ngā maunga o te uru, ngā tai papaki o te manukanuka o Hoturoa, ki whaingaroa, moana ki Aotea whenua ki kawhia tangata, ki te takotoranga o te waka tūpuna o Tainui, tēnei au te kanohi kitea o rātou mā. And basically that's just a acknowledgement of where I come from, that I come from the wild west coast of the North Island of New Zealand, acknowledging the maunga along the coast and the mountains along the coast and the sea. And the harbours that run out into the sea, and our ancestral waka, our ancestral canoe that carried our ancestors to New Zealand, the Tainui canoe, is buried in Kawhia, and I am a living face of them who have passed. So, tēnā koutou katoa. I'll move this on. Oops, okay. So this is called The Invisible Woman, and as Erin said, I've been working on this for a while. We've been quite challenged on our female lines, and I will tell you just why. So this lady, she's purposely partially invisible, just in because that's what the class is about, the invisible woman, the woman not seen. So Rebecca Anderson Gentry, Gentry is her married name. She is my great-great-grandmother, and it is her mother who is the invisible woman. And feel free to ask questions at any time. So this little, the obituary, Mr. William Davis Anderson, a very old colonist, died at Warahoi last week at the great age of 95 years. He had been 69 years in the colony and was married to a native woman at St. Paul's Church, Auckland. He He leaves 4 sons, the eldest of whom is nearly 60 years old. So I was taken with this, a native woman. After 40 years marriage, because she predeceased him, but after 40 years of marriage, she's not named in his obituary, but she's just a native woman. And I kind of took offense at that. I was quite saddened by that there was no name for her. So this here, so my mum was 9 when her mother died, young, 39. And my grandmother was 12 when her father died. He died from the Spanish flu in 1918. And his mother is Rebecca, who's portrayed here in the photo. He was 10 when his mother died, and she was only 32. And then on the other side, so my great-grandfather William's wife, my great-grandmother, this is Polly Jane Hadden. Her father was orphaned at 9 years old in New Zealand because his mother had died shortly after arrival in 1852. And then 5 years later, his father died, and he and his brother, who was 11, were raised by their brothers who were 15 and 20 until the 15-year-old died, and it was left to the 20-year-old to raise his brothers. And again, this is a new land for them. So this is the why Rebecca's mother was invisible to us. So many years of premature death, of dying young, that our stories or their stories weren't passed down as they may have if they had lived a full life to even 50s or 60s. So my aunties, my grandaunts, my grandmother's sisters, who were surviving in the 1980s, they shared with me some stories. But it seemed to me that they had wound 3 lines of ancestry together as one. And so we came from Scotland. But when I did my research, that wasn't the case. Only one did. So here's where we were in 1984 when I was asked to put together family history presentation for family reunion. So this is Rebecca here, the lady who's portrayed. She's the Anderson. Her mother, we simply had down as Mrs. William Davis Anderson. You know, how sad is that? How sad is that the generations following, we still didn't know her name in 1984. We knew his name. We knew their 4 children who my grandaunts had shared with me. This is the line I come from, William. He died at 47 years of age. His daughter Rebecca is my grandmother, who died at 39. My mother thankfully lived to be 78, and myself. And the other family we knew from this Anderson family is Edith here, a cousin, who also sadly died young. So she was the kind of conduit for all contact with the Anderson family. But when she died, it kind of got a bit fuzzy after that. Hence the invisibility of this nanny up here, my great-great-great-grandmother. She was invisible to us. And then fast forward to Family Search, good old Family Search. I was, just looking over things on Family Search, and lo and behold, I found this family group sheet. And I got a bit annoyed. I wanted to delete the 4 extra siblings. And then I saw this name here, Rangi Peka. She is, so Mrs. William Davis Anderson, the name of his wife was Rangi Peka. So I found that on Family Search, and it was entered into Family Search by the eldest daughter here, Tipa, Tipa. Tipa is a Maori version of the name Hefzeba or Epsiba. So they knew who the ancestress was. And so when I got over myself, when I realized I know this name, Rangipeka is my mother's sister's name, middle name, then I did some more research, and there was no doubt that these other siblings belonged, and that I was looking at a really good contribution to the knowledge base. And then even in this, so coming down also through that, we were also able to find more information from Edith, the cousin of my grandmother, who also had died at 28 or 29. So I just want to now jump to the way Maori naming traditions, basically. So we didn't have surnames until the Europeans came into the picture. We basically just had a single personal name and picked up other names along the way through our life. Those names could have been about an attribute, could have been about an event, or it could have been just another name that people wanted to put over the person or the individual. So at the end of someone's life, you can guarantee we have multiple names. That's in addition to nicknames, multiple names. So in terms of Rangipeka, finding her name, Rangipeka, made it possible for me to then go to the Maori Land Court. So we have a Maori Land Court here. It's a great repository of information. So what I found there, so you can't really go there if you don't know a name, because you don't know what you're looking for. And even even a single name can lead you to more information if you're looking in the right region. So I put her name into the database at the Maori Land Court, and then up came all sorts of records, and it was just like a treasure chest, what we found out about her. One of the interesting things that, because this is the time of the so-called Maori land wars, the 1860s, and of course her husband, being a European, was at risk. And so there are accounts in the Maori Land Court records about how he had to hide, how she was, people tried to disown her, disinherit her from her lands of inheritance, simply because she had married an English man. So those are really interesting things to finding things out about her life and also her family's life. And then, of course, we have all the accounts of Rangipeka herself giving evidence in the land court as she sought to claim her land interests through her ancestors. She appeared as Ripeka, which is a English translation or transliteration of Rebecca, and I think Ripeka is a shortened version of Rangipeka, which is her name. So Rangipeka appeared in court under various names: Rebecca Anderson, Ripeka Anderson, Ripeka Rangipeka. And in time, over those years of her giving testimony in the land court, Rangipeka became like a surname. And to this day, there are people who have taken on the surname Peka. So this name and this is lovely, but it also makes it difficult to find people. So as I said in the last slide, Rangipeka kind of took on a surname function. So here's Tipa, the oldest girl, and she's known. This is a deed of sale. from these three men or four men here, one, two, three men, an exchange between these three men and these highlighted men being the Anderson sons and the Anderson daughter, who, interestingly enough, doesn't have the Maori version Anihana as her surname, but she has her mother's name, Rangipeka, as her name, as her surname in this situation. Patunga te tangata toi tu te whenua. That means that people die, but mountains, they stand for generations. So that's basically just recognizing the longevity of nature and the very brief time that mankind has on the earth. So that's related to the way I introduce myself in acknowledgement of our time on earth is fleeting, but the mountains, the seas, the lakes, and that they outlast us. So beyond the land base that the Māori Land Court has, it's very comprehensive, it's huge, and it goes back to the 1860s. And it's just a wealth of information, not only about land, but the beauty is that it gives you, we didn't have Bibles like people had in other countries, family Bibles, where you wrote your information into the covers. A lot of people did that, and we very rarely had those. But people when they went to claim their land interests, they told their stories, and those were recorded in the land court by the person giving testimony, by others adding to it, by others disputing it. So there's very rich information there in the Māori Land Court. And again, so that rich information, it's like a mountain of information. That mountain lives longer than the people whose information is held in those repositories. So that's what I'm likening that to. But once I knew her name, as I said, it was very easy to find Rangipeka. And that's not always the case with Māori. It's usually very, very difficult. But I believe that because she was married to an Englishman, and she and her children basically walked in two worlds, they were, we can find them. We can find them in records because they were engaging in the system, and that made it so much easier to find information about her. So that's our Anderson family. That's the missing woman, the invisible woman who was relegated to, marriage. He married a native woman. We didn't know her name, and to be able to find her. So now I want to step out to my father's mother's family just to show you how we can go about finding names, people, using the Māori Land Court database. If there's any questions, just send them in. So this is my grandmother, my father's parents here, and so the ladies are the pinkies, and the men are the white ones. So Hinuku, my grandmother, her father is Tāre, his father is Maikuku. And as I said, people just had a personal name, but years following, the names became surnames. So Maikuku, which was his only name, became the surname of Tāre. And then it became the surname of my grandmother, Henuku. But she was also known as Henuku Tāre. And these are the complexities when doing searches through the Māori Land Court. So just for an example, and this is very small, Henuku Tāre Maikuku. So can you see, have I got my, hang on, have I got the red marker on? The first name there, Maikuku, Henuku Tāre, excuse me. Maikuku is acting there as a surname. Henuku is my grandmother's name, and Tāre is her father's name. So she is this name here. She's known by this name because the land that she is claiming or succeeding to is inherited through her father, Tāre. So Tāre is in there. Then you've got another step, another level back. Maikuku, the surname. Henuku, the Christian name. Tāre, her father's name, by which she gains the land interest. And then Huri here is Tāre's mother's name. And that's who Tāre got these interests from, not from his father, Maikuku. So that's a little bit of, so the following lines there. And then down the bottom, it's a little bit different. Tu te ao Henuku Tāre. So that's an acknowledgement of her surname, her married name, Tu te ao, and then Henuku, and again, where she got the land from her father, Tāre. And so this is what you do when you go onto this website called maorilandonline.gov.nz. And what I did here was I put in my grandmother's name, Henuku, and I think 7 names came up, and I had to pick, I had to look at who am I looking for. Only one of those names I didn't know, this Henuku Preston, but the rest of them are my grandmother, her mother, and my grandmother and her mother. And again, it's as I explained in the previous slide. But that's, so when I found Rangi Peka, I put her name in there, search owners, I put in her name, and then up came Rangi Peka. And then it told me what books to go to, what minute books to go to. And then I started scrolling through all the records that she showed up in and was able to find so much information about her. But in saying that, so you need to know a name, you need to know an area that they live in, because then you can go to the right minute books. You need to kind of know a little bit about their ancestry, like their parents' names, to be able to make the connection. So it's not as easy as just finding a name. You've got to know the other names that come through that person's genealogy, or whakapapa as we call it in Māori. Now, and this is the approach. So in the case where you might have a little bit of information, where do you go? Where do you go to find out more? If you can't find them in the native land, in the Māori Land Court, where do you go? So I've just listed things here about the way Māori like to be approached, because land is very, people are very exclusive about land, very protective about, you just want to find my genealogy so you can come and steal my land. That's a throwback from the old days, from the original days of the land court, the purpose of the land court. So you need to do your homework before you need to know who to contact And basically, first of all, ask the people you know, ask the people you're related to, get as much information as you can. And then if they can't fill the gaps for you, then you need to be moving beyond them. But never, Māori will close the door. They will hang up the phone. If you come to them and say, oh, I need to know my whakapapa, I need to know my grandparents, things like that, phone goes down, doors closed. That's not the way to approach. And I don't think that's acceptable in any culture, but definitely in Māori, it's not acceptable. So you have to do your homework. You have to know who you are speaking to. And I've got here, do not cold call and say, oh, I come from so and so, or I'm looking for my grandparents. You have to do your homework, because you have to give people something to connect to be able to help you. And what I have done all the time is I will write something. I'll get my thoughts on paper. I'll be very clear, and I'll send off something very brief, because nobody wants to read a 5-page essay. They want bulletproofs. They want 1-pagers. They want as brief as possible, but as much information as possible that makes it attractive for them to take your call or take your visit. So the best way, I think, is go with that heartfelt thing about I have got a gap in my identity. I come from this area. My grandparents come from this area. Can you help me? Really genuine, really heartfelt, written things. And you can practice that, and you can make a call if you have that, those details. You can make a call, but never expect that the call is the end of it. The call is not even the beginning, but all the time is you share what you know, because you're trying to help the person you're trying to connect with. You're trying to help them see how they connect with you, and why then they should share the information that you might be looking for, or share contact details of people who they think might be able to help you more than they. And never, 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 ever say, oh, I've got some land in such and such. I saw my grandfather's name. How do I get into it? Never, ever raise those questions, because again, the door will be shut on you. And ask if they, ideally, you want to meet them. You want to talk face to face with them. And the next slide says why. He kanohi kitea, he hokinga whakaro. So when your face is seen, they might see people in your face. They might recognize you look like so-and-so. Straight away, you've got that connection. If they got on, that is. He kanohi kitea. So front up. And that is, that's the preferred way of getting any information from Māori, is to make an initial contact, but the real contact is face to face. And it is all on their time. Your time does not matter at all. I've had an interview with an uncle, and it was an interview. It wasn't about family thing. It was about his schooling experience. He talked for 3 90-minute tapes, and he closed his eyes and he just spoke. And then he finished, and I said, "Thank you, Uncle. I've got a few questions." And he goes, "Questions? I've told you everything." And he wasn't happy that I had questions, because he hadn't answered what I went to him for. But that's just the way it goes. We're at their disposal, not them at us, at ours. And so we've got to meet at their convenience. We need to, it's a good idea to go with someone who knows them, who they know, and who they like. It's no point taking someone who they don't like. So that's what you ask your people. You know, if you've got an auntie and you want to go and see this old man or old woman, you say, hey, does that person like you? It's no use taking your auntie if that person doesn't want to see her. Straight away, the door is shut on you, because not because of you, but because of what may have gone down before. And secondly, as I've said before, don't go empty-handed. Share. This whole thing is about sharing, helping them to switch in to something, to jog their memory, to come out with something that might be significant to you. So you've got to really plant the seeds. It's a lot of work. It's a real lot of work. And be prepared to go back however many times you need to. So, you know, the first visit, you are being checked out. You don't expect that you're going to get everything that you think you need. They're testing you. They're checking you out before they actually share. They need to know that they can trust you. So, don't go in there with your questions. Okay, you know, this is my grandmother. That's all I know. Who's her grandparents? What can you tell me about her grandparents? You don't start like that. You have to start with the person you're visiting at this time. That's why you need to do your homework. And leave a little bit of yourself. You know, take something that can maybe jog their memory, remind them that you were there and what you are seeking, so that they can call you back and say, I've just remembered something, you know. So we call that aroha mai. Somebody's giving you something, love shown, love shared. Aroha mai, aroha atu. It's a koha principle. It's a gifting principle. So this last one here, your research only really begins after you have gathered what you can from your interactions with the people that might be able to give you some information, you know, and each one might only be able to give you a snippet. But as you pull them all together, you start to see a picture, and then you may need to go back to them again to check, and you should go back to them to check if you've got it right, especially when you are pulling a lot of different information together. And here's another big one. So what we see in the Maori land court records is that people have different stories. So the person themselves, like Rangi Peka, she would have said, this is me, I was born in this place and I married this man, and this is my mother and she was born there, and this is my father, and this is my sister, this is my brother, all of those things. And then next time she stands in court, she might say, okay, I am Rebecca Anderson and I was born in a different place. You know, so even the person giving evidence can actually give a different account in that instance of where she was born. And then the sons might give yet another account of where their mother was born. So you really have to mine the information. You have to really go through it. And then you also have people who contest what people are saying. Other people giving evidence are saying their evidence is contested by others. But in their challenge, they may also add how they are related to that person or people who have been mentioned by the person they are actually challenging. And that's beautiful in itself too, because you're going sideways, you're also going up, and you're coming down to that very person who may be challenging, cross-examining the person giving the testimony. So it's a very complex system, but a very rewarding treasure chest when you can work through those records in the Māori Land Court. So I've just gone through the experience with Rangi Peka, a Māori woman, and how us as generations, she's my great-great-great-grandmother, we had no information about who she was until another branch of the family, her eldest daughter, so I come from the middle daughter, her eldest daughter, her family had information and they put it into family search, and we were then able to access it to meet some of those families and realize that we've known some of these people all our lives, and now we know how we are related and we're able to share information, and that's a celebration. So that's a woman unnamed. Now I just want to go on to another grandmother, another nanny. Again, she's my great-great-great-grandmother. She's Scottish-Irish, and she came out in 1852, the wife of a soldier, a retired soldier. They came out under a scheme to protect the colony, specifically Auckland, to protect that from the Maori. And thankfully, my retired soldier, great-great-great-grandfather, well, he had died prior to the land wars, so thankfully he didn't have to fight against my other ancestors, but they came out on that scheme. She died just after they arrived. She lies in an unmarked grave. We kind of know the general direction of where her and her daughter are buried, but we know her name, but we don't know her apart from her as the mother and a wife. So that's a form of invisibility as well. Hannah Fitzgerald, also known as Anne Laura Hannah Fitzgerald, but on one of her son's death certificates, she's known as Flanora Fitzgerald, Flanora, and I've seen that as a surname. It's very difficult to find who she was before she was Mrs. Hadden. And here she is again. The little map at the back here is where she's buried in Auckland. The motorway runs over it, an overpass, so she's not being run over, but she's down here. Her and her daughter are down here in the Roman Catholic area of this old cemetery. So I'm asking here, and so this is a work in progress. It still is, who was she before she was Mrs. James Hadden? She bore children in Canada, at least 2. She lost a son, or they lost their oldest son en route to New Zealand in 1852. And then she herself got very, very sick on the boat, on the voyage over, and unfortunately didn't live to see the new land and start a new future in New Zealand with her children and husband. And again, her bones lie in an unmarked grave. This woman, Hannah Fitzgerald Hadden, she wants to be known. She really does, but she's not coming fast enough for me. I'm impatient. I've been searching for her for years. I did DNA to try and find a lot of us with common genealogy to be able to find her family. She wants to be known, and she's giving us little tips here and there, ever so slowly. We've really got to work for it. But So 2019 BC, that's before COVID, I was planning a heritage trip to Ireland, Scotland, and England. And I was going to start in Ireland because it's north, and I was going to work my way down to London and Essex. The timing for my trip, I did a bit of, and lucky enough, I had the reverend of the church they were married at, which was St. Mary's in Clonmel in Tipperary. And I had contact with the reverend, and she told me that there's a festival, because I asked her, what's the best time to come? And she said, look, there's a festival in August. It's about celebrating the medieval times and a few other things. And, you'll enjoy it just as an add-on to my genealogical, journey. So this little map here is showing Clonmel, which is the capital of Tipperary County, or County Tipperary. The festival I learned is called Festival Cluain Meala, and I looked up what does that mean. It's the Gaelic name or the Irish name for Clonmel. And so I looked that up, and what did I find? Clonmel, or Cluain Meala, was the capital of barony, and it still is, Clonmel is, the barony of Iffa and Offa. And when I read that, I got the chills. And this is what I mean about this invisible woman, Hannah Fitzgerald. She was reaching out. Iffa and Offa. So the next morning I called my auntie and I said, Aunt, why did I name myself Iffa? And she said, we don't know, but you called yourself that. Iffa Tūteo. My name is Iffa Tūteo. And I have flashbacks of myself on the gate at my grandparents'. This is my Maori grandparents, Henuku, who I was looking at, singing the song that my name is Iffa Tūteo and I'm going to marry this man. I had no idea who he was, but Iffa. And here I am in 2019. I'm coming across this place, Iffa and Offa. And it really sent the chills up me. She's been reaching out for some time. Because why would I call myself Iffa? That's nothing like Verna. Really? But I called myself Iffa. So I haven't yet been on my heritage journey, and I don't know if I want to go in these changing times anymore. But this is, I found this gem that somehow through the generations, I have called myself after a place that is connected to Hannah's family. So just in summary, as you see, there are multiple types of invisibility. Invisible because you are unnamed. Invisible because though you are named, you are not known beyond the function of being a mother and a wife. Invisible because we have lost the knowledge to remember that person. Names and the variations of names and the multiple names can be a plus, but they can also make things very, very difficult ascertaining who am I actually looking at. Even so, I swear by the Maori Land Court as the place to find Maori information about Maori genealogy. It goes right back to the arrival of the canoes, or the waka, between the 900s and 1300s. Those are the testimonies that people give. So it is a wondrous treasure chest for us. Again, if you are looking for information, you need to be seen. You need to connect face to face with that person. And secondly, and lastly, finally, I believe that the sharing is not a Maori thing; it's a universal. If you want to find, you need to do your homework, and you need to offer up something that can connect those people to you, that they may be able to share with you, or you making that connection anyway, even if they can't share anything with you. So basically that's my presentation. And now we go to questions.
First of all, that was so wonderful. And I learned so much. Actually, there was a question that came in, and then you must have been inspired because you answered it right away, which was, are there any specific protocols or customs that should be followed when discussing or researching Maori genealogy? So I actually wanted to ask you a follow-up because you did a great job of outlining protocols to follow when reaching out to people. What are you going to do with the tapes from those interviews? How are you planning on preserving them, or what are you doing?
Well, we so now we have the benefit of technology. So we share things with each other online. We have whakapapa days genealogy days. We have reunions where we share things. It's just sharing it out everywhere. My mother comes from a family who are very sharing, and so we share everything. We give out information, even if we don't want people to know it, it's out there. But it's a gem too, because the good and the not so good stuff about people. But that's what makes up a person. That's what makes up families, is all the variety. In terms of my grandfather's journals, he was a very my mother's father was a farmer, and so he kept a diary every day. He's writing even things we think are insignificant, like the names of his horses and his cows, and when they gave birth and to what and all that. He just religiously was a record keeper. So I had 5 of those diaries, and I deposited them with the Matthew Cowley with a church museum in Hamilton, in Temple View, because one, they know how to preserve. I scanned everything, and I've shared them with people who ask, and I go through the laborious task of every file is, every individual scan has got the date, and I did a bit of an indexing about what's in each of those days when there was anything really interesting, like, oh, my daughter was born today, things like that. Those entries are really exciting to my mum and their families. So I just highlight different areas, but I didn't like smelly books, how they get old and they start to smell. And I thought, well, the best place for that is in a museum where everybody can access them, and then they're available to everybody. So we do a lot of sharing, and I think technology is a real gem that we are able to share instantly, and we can share in film. Incidentally, I had a couple of nephews who did films. They're called Legacy 23, of my mother and her siblings. They did a film, at least 15 minutes each, on each of those siblings.
Wow.
There might be 4, 5, 6. There might be I think there's only 6 left. So they're a real taonga, or real treasure for us as we play them over and over and over again, and we have a cry. Yeah. So
it's
they
priceless.
did.
Yeah, I think that it's so important to maintain those records so that, the generations that are coming, it's easier for them to find. If you have a free family search account, there is a functionality there where you can upload an audio file and tag the people who are in it so that they can give permissions for it to be on Family Search as well and findable in the memories area. If you aren't sure how to digitize it, one of my colleagues gave a great tip where you can get to a quiet place, play the tape, and film it with your phone as an audio file, and it's automatically saved as an MP3. So it's really easy to upload if you do that, because those are such priceless memories and things that you just want to preserve. So I love that. That's really great. We did have another question that I thought was really interesting, and I don't think we covered it in your presentation yet. I don't know if you know, but Danny from YouTube asks, do you know how far back can Maori genealogy be traced? And what are the primary sources used for this?
Yeah, primary sources, I think, are minimal, and they won't go back too far. So you have, we have a lot of genealogical tables going right back to Adam. You know, you got no primary sources for those. And, you know, I mean, you just look at things, you just accept them, and, you know, people will promote their versions, but definitely back to, a majority go back to the arrival of the canoes, the migration from Middle Pacific to New Zealand. And again, it's all oral, you know, the majority of it is oral until we get into this written record space, which is like the land courts, probably the 1820s. But before that, it's all been very oral. And, you know, those are primary sources. But they are interpreted in diverse ways. As you know, everything has a little bit of truth, and everything has a little bit of flavor, local flavor or family flavor, according to who's telling the story. But, you know, though, that's the fun of working through records. So, you know, I have seen people right back to Adam, and my granddaughter is like giggling, and she's going, man, there's Jesus Christ, you know, in the genealogy, in the whakapapa. But, you know, I mean, yeah. People
that's
do
really
that.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll have a look over it. And it goes back through the islands, especially goes back to Hawaii and the Marquesas and things like that. There's a common, different, you know, the names change. They become more Hawaiian or more Samoan, depending on where the movement was at that time. So it can go back to Adam.
Yeah, that's really interesting to follow, that migration too. I mean, it's so common for so many parts of the world, but I think that New Zealand is a melting pot in and of itself, you know, for the islands. That's really interesting. We also had Devin Campbell from, let's see, that he wasn't available to watch live. So you can watch it afterwards. Yeah. This is going to be on rootstech.org, or the Family Search YouTube channel, and it's probably easiest to find it in those two places, but it will also be on Rootstech and Family Search Facebook. So you can find it afterwards. And as a reminder, if you have questions and you're watching the replay, please still ask them, and we will make sure that we get to you and make sure we try to answer your question the best that we can. Verna, it has been so lovely to have you. It's such an amazing bonus for us to have found you and to learn so much. This was very informative, and we hope we can do a lot more. We hope you've enjoyed your time with us too. But thank you so much. This is awesome. Everyone, thanks for joining in, and make sure that you share this with someone who would benefit and value to learn more about their family history down in New Zealand. And a lot of these tips are relevant anywhere you live. But thank you again, and have a great day.